Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. This is the second part of our two-part special where we're joined by David Carsten Peterson from Denmark.
If you didn't hear the first part of this, go back and make sure you check it out. Otherwise, what we're going to talk about now probably isn't going to make very much sense. We will pick up pretty much where we left off with a little intro of the second film that we talked about that David has made. This podcast is brought to you, as always, by the Scottish Association for Country Sports.
Life's great adventure is different for everybody. For me, it's about doing what you love, and what I love to do is go hunting. As a hunter, I live to travel the world and see new places. I want to go where I've never been, see the other side of the horizon, and learn as much from nature as it's willing to show me.
So I think that was just the first 20 seconds of narration from the film that you filmed out in British Columbia, and I mean another beautifully shot film, and another in a totally different way, a great message. Why did you? What was it? The series of events that led you to make that film, and what was it about from you, and what did you learn from it?
It's actually quite. It's quite a long list of events. That's. I had a very long chat with. Armin Dobert from ZEISS. Yeah, and for quite some years actually about my frustrations with how we were portrayed as hunters normally, and what I think could be done. And I was very inspired by the movie Searching for West by Mark Seacat.
It's another fantastic movie.
Yeah, very
yeah.
Well,
that really. That movie really changed the industry especially in Europe. Like, I think a lot of Americans were already playing around with something like that. But I remember seeing Searching for West and going like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. If we do hunting movies, that's how we got to do it. And I was very inspired by Jeff Simpson as well, who ended up being the photographer on the British Columbia film. So that was actually quite a little bit of a fan thing for me to actually be in one of the movies that I've seen so many times. But no, I talked very long for quite some years with Armin about it, and then at some point he says, "Okay, dude, you've been talking about it for so many times, for so many years. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see what you can do." And he got Jeff in on it because Jeff also wanted to tell the story about who we are as hunters in a very different way than it was told in America in the 80s and 90s, especially in the 90s. So we decided, okay, how can we show that love of traveling, of adventure, of exploration, that a hunting trip abroad is. And I've always wanted to go to British Columbia and to see the backcountry. And as a European hunter, we see so much stuff coming from the States. So it was quite natural that we were going to do this one in British Columbia and try to get one of those extraordinarily big moose that are running around over there. Unfortunately, as it does happen with hunting, we never actually saw that moose. It never happened. We had this whole setup. We were, again, what you see in the movie is the reality. If we had a single chance of shooting a big moose, we would have done it. Especially after 10 days of slugging around in every imaginable weather situation that you could have. We were reined in for 2 days in that little tiny cabin. I remember reading, what was it, Game of Thrones, book 2. I think I read the whole book on that trip, because when you're in a place like that, if the weather is too bad, then you just have to roll with it. You can't force nature.
And it brings its own problems, not with just the hunting. And I know from filming ourselves, filming in weather like that, when it's raining, sideways, rain, wind, it's almost impossible to film, let alone hunt.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things that, again, if you force it. I know people use the expression to hunt hard, and then you keep pushing on, and I do that myself. I'm very bad at calling quits. But you also have to hunt smart. Mm-hmm. If you push yourself in an environment like that, there are some quite some dangerous possibilities that if you get caught on the mountain or caught outside in the rain for quite some time, and you can get hypothermia. There's so many things that can happen that it's much easier to say, okay, let's just do this right. So it was an extraordinary trip. Again, you learn a lot about people by spending 10 days with them in a cabin, and you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, it's very true.
And it was funny that of course it was extremely frustrating that we couldn't find that moose, and we tried every single trick in the book. But also it was kind of nice to be able to tell another story, because the hunter always backs the trophy. When you see a hunting movie, it's very, very few hunting movies where you don't shoot anything.
I was just going to say that, and I think part of the beauty of that film is almost the fact that you didn't get something, because I mean the point of the matter is that you did everything that you would otherwise do apart from see it and pull the trigger. That's and that's hunting.
I've had some funny comments about it, because people were like, okay, did you actually have the license, and weren't you allowed to show a kill on screen? And you're like, well, if it was there, we would have definitely taken it, or tried to. But again, it shows that we wanted to show with honesty what is a real hunt.
Yeah, what actually happens.
Like we've all tried. Every single hunter had tried to go on a hunt where you didn't shoot anything. You still had a pretty good day, or a week, or whatever. But that's not what's portrayed in the media. It's not what's portrayed in our in the movie industry.
No. And I think that's our own fault. I mean, I was going to bring this up actually, is that a lot of you kind of mentioned it already, is that a lot of the hunting films that are made, that are available online. There's a long list of quite well-known names, certainly within the industry, who are making these films. For a start, they're actually only made for hunters to watch. They're not really designed for anybody outside of a passion for hunting to watch. And I even find them fairly distasteful that I can't watch them. But secondly, every single one of them, almost without exception, ends in that shot,
the kill shot,
which is what you just said. So I think there's something beautiful about telling the true story, which is what you've managed to capture in both your films.
Thank you very much. That was the goal, to say, okay, can we make a hunting movie that non-hunters will watch? Because it depends on what you want to do with your movie. If you want to preach for the choir, then okay, let's make a hunting movie where we just show like the coolest or the funniest or the most exciting parts of hunting. I do enjoy that. I think there's some very well made films where they do get the stag, or where the mission accomplished, and that's great and everybody's happy. But if what we are creating is actually, we are creating cultural bullets in this war against people who don't understand who we are. If you want to create something like that, then it has to work with people who are not already within the family.
Yeah, not already on the same page.
Yeah, on the same page. You have to be able to take this movie, show it to a vegan, and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what we're doing. This is the reality of it. And I think it was extremely ballsy of ZEISS to say, okay, fine, let's do our big launch of the V8 scope. Let's do it with a movie where we don't shoot anything.
Yeah.
Because it's the whole idea was to do something honest.
But I mean, it doesn't take anything away from that film whatsoever. I mean, I personally, when I watch a hunting film or anything, I'm not looking for the kill shot. I could quite happily, like Byron's just discussed, and yourself, happily watch a whole film, and for me, it's about the story and not about the kill shot at the end. So I'm not bothered if an animal's not killed during a film or anything. And your film, I mean, beautifully shot once again. And like you said, nothing was shot, but it doesn't take anything away from the story.
There's a lot of films out there that are fairly poor films held together with stuff dying, and I think that gives completely the wrong impression of hunters. And there's a lot of people who make these. I mean, there's so much of it because it's so freely available now that I watch, and I just hope to myself that the story that I'm watching is not really the story that went on. And the sort of the way that people are acting is for the camera, because a lot of those people I wouldn't even class as hunters, or I wouldn't want to class myself in the same, area as them, or under the same title, because there are quite a lot of people who shoot and hunt in inverted commas who do not do hunting any justice or portray what the truth is and what it should be about hunting.
I think it's very important that when you work in this industry, and if you actually want to, again, my mission when I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to telling stories about who we are, was that I wanted to make sure that we could save this for the future generations. If you want to do that, you have to do it in your own way. You have to do it in a way where you can look yourself in the eye and say, okay, this is who I am, and if people can relate to that, then fine. And there are very different hunters, and there are also very different traditions. If you hunt in South Africa, the culture is different than the culture in Australia or New Zealand, or different parts of America is also very different. Different parts of Denmark is different. So I think we sometimes also as hunters have a tendency to expect that all hunters are alike.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point.
Once you put on the green, then we're all the same. And at some point, that, like, if you sit around the campfire and look another guy in the eye, there's something deep down which is the same. But there are also things where you say, okay, that doesn't really float my boat, or say, okay, bow hunting, I can't relate to that. It's fine that you enjoy it. I think it's stupid, but I'm not going to be in the way of your enjoyment. As long as you do it clean, as long as you do it ethically, as long as you do it legally.
Yeah, and I think that what you've just said there is the key point, and maybe I didn't express that properly at the time, is that there are, like you've just said, that there are a lot of different traditions. There's a lot of different ways of doing the same thing. And that is absolutely fine. You and I will agree on some stuff. We'll probably disagree on other stuff, and we'll agree and disagree with other hunters as well. But if the end result is what you've just described, it's ethical, it's clean, it's quick, and very importantly from my point of view, and I'm sure that you'll agree, respectful to the sacrifice of life, then I've got no problem with the process that takes you there. Because if you're fulfilling all of those, then it doesn't matter, because that is the end goal.
Yeah, and it's in my line of work, where I write for a lot of different hunting magazines, and I visit so many different hunters. Just in Denmark, it dawned on me that the cultural difference from north to south, or from one hunting community to the other, it's actually one of the funniest part of traveling around your own country, is that the difference is quite big. And that these small things, the small cultural differences, the small technical differences, or just the different people and the different humor, the different stories, it opens up a vast universe of experiences that you wouldn't have if everybody were trained in the same way, or they had the same. If we have they're all trained in the same hunting academy and were kind of put out in little green blocks. So I like the diversity
it's what's beautiful.
The hunting culture.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. You're absolutely right.
It's also something that we have a tendency also to, as hunters, to we bitch each other quite a lot. I don't know if British hunters do that, but Danish hunters are quite bad at picking at each other.
Yeah.
Especially on the internet. Stop writing stuff about each other on Facebook, please. Behave on Facebook.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think there's so much to learn from each other by saying, okay, you do it like that. Oh, that's interesting. We don't. Maybe there's a reason for it, or maybe there isn't. But maybe we could learn something. It's also that's one of the key messages in the ZEISS movie is that every hunt is a learning experience. Every time you go out, doesn't matter if it's one morning for crows or if it's 10 days for a moose that wasn't there. You learn from everything, and every hunting experience teaches you that you actually don't know anything yet.
Yeah, no, that's true. And what you say about the different way that different countries and different cultures and parts of countries do things is so true. And that is another aspect of hunting that certainly from the outside people maybe don't realize. But for me, when I go to a country that I've never hunted in before and I get to see how they do things, I can be that's enough for me. I don't even have to pick up a rifle. Just to be part of it, to attend a hunt that these guys are on and learn the way that they do things is, that's me fulfilled as far as, that experience goes. And it's a bonus for me if I also get to do a bit of hunting myself. But I know that we're running on for time a little bit. We've probably kept you far too long. So we've got two more things that I just want to touch on. I actually have a long list that we're not even going to get to. So I think we're going to have you on again at some point. But the one thing here, we'll just try and keep this. We'll try and keep this brief if we can. This is something I came up against a couple of weeks back. I was speaking to a couple of rifle manufacturers, and one in particular, who at the moment will remain nameless. I wanted to discuss with them, have them on the podcast, and discuss with them basically what we've been doing now. A bit of hunting. Cecil Line was quite topical back then. And as a manufacturer of big game rifles, or big game and big bore rifles, it made perfect sense to me that you would want to justify the part of the industry, that particular niche of the industry that is your business. And the comeback from that was that basically they didn't really want to discuss that aspect of it, the hunting aspect of it, with the company name, because of the backlash that you get from the media. I mean, the next thing that I wanted to speak to you about was the big elephant that's just been shot in Zimbabwe. But what are your thoughts on that, David? I mean, my personal thoughts are that anybody who is part of this industry should be doing their utmost to defend it, and even if it means we've got to bleed a bit for it, we have to do it because it is the right thing.
Yes, it's. I'm amazed that the industry doesn't. There's quite a few within the industry that does quite a lot to support the hunting cause, but they just do it a little bit on the quiet. I'm a firm believer in that if you believe in what you do, you stand up for it. I think the industry would benefit a lot from actually learning something from the Americans that you have in the U.S. The weapons or the hunting arms manufacturers are very good at supporting the cause and saying, okay, guys, thanks for supporting us. We will also support you. We will fund projects that is not just related to our brand, but actually helps conservation efforts. We will support media efforts. I think it's important that everybody chips in. If you believe in this, if you believe in what you do, then you can't just sit back. And this also goes to hunters and everybody who enjoys the countryside life or just the connection with nature, is that you can't sit on the sidelines. There are no sidelines. You are already in the game. And if we do not protect this, if we don't do something, then it will disappear. It takes one generation, and then poof, it's gone. But the good side is that in the modern media world, where we have like when you have problems like with Cecil the lion, or you have with the elephant being shot, you will have massive uproars in the media. It'll be pretty fast, and the whole industry are going to go, oh, no, they're banning this, and they're banning this, and they're banning this. And then the next week, something else happens, and everybody moves on. And we sit back and going like, okay, but we were pretty serious about this. Like, we took you seriously, and then you just left.
Well, it's whatever sells papers at that time, isn't it?
Yeah, but my point is, don't wait for the aggression. Change the game.
Yeah,
be the
be
guy.
on the front foot.
Be on the front page.
Yeah.
Make the news. Go and say, okay, guys, we are this and this and this rifle manufacturer. We fully support this anti-poaching unit who is funded in this hunting area. This is the reality of life in Africa. And introduce that story. We've actually had that in Denmark. The political environment around hunting is very, very different in Denmark than it is many other places, because we've been extremely aggressive in the media.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to give you an example here, obviously, because we were just talking about the African elephant that was shot, I think it was last week.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you the title from a newspaper.
Sunday Express in the UK.
The Sunday Express in the UK, and these are the titles that they're using to draw people in. Hunter pays 40k to murder huge elephant in aftermath of Cecil the Lion outrage. That's the titles that we have across our front pages of our papers.
And of course, we've just found out yesterday or the day before that the Cecil the Lion hunt was completely legal, and there are no charges being brought after all of that, because everyone jumped to conclusions and they were all wrong.
I once heard Jim Shockey at SHOT Show
A legend.
speak.
A lot of respect for that man.
Yeah, he was speaking about the people criticizing big game hunting and hunting and conservation funded by hunters, and he said that people who are serious about banning hunting should be punished in the same way as poachers, because the damage that they do on the conservation effort is actually greater than just one guy with an AK-47. And that's pretty stern, I think. He was, but to some extent, I don't think these people understand what they're actually destroying. When you sell papers like that, when you do headlines like that, and throw tantrums in the media and kind of try to stir up that shitstorm, they don't understand the long-term consequences of what they are doing. I am 100% for ethical, sustainable big game hunting. I'm a trained professional hunter in South Africa. And I know that without the money from hunting, without the private game reserves funded by hunting, the game is just not going to be there.
No, it'll be poached out. It'll be poached out.
It'll be poached out, or it'll just disappear due to that. The farms will take over, the cattle will take over. Having a lion running around in your backyard is not a very comfortable thing. I love the interview with the local Zimbabwean about somebody killing a named lion, and he said, "Good on you, man. Like, we hate those things."
Yeah.
And which I think is personally, I think that's very sad. But it also just shows the
cultural difference.
The cultural difference is like if you have an elephant running around in your backyard trampling on your crops, that's very annoying. If you have 13,000 elephants running around your crops, that's a problem. And the only way that you can get people to not shoot this animal, like we shoot rabbits in the fields because they eat our crops. Imagine having a rabbit the size of an elephant. That is the reality of some of the places in Africa where elephants live.
Sorry.
So if we don't put a value on this elephant is worth a lot more if you can invite some hunters to come and shoot it and to put the money. Then it's actually worth a lot more alive, that single elephant, than just this guy walking out of his shamba and shooting it.
Now, you were just talking briefly there about the damage that can be done on social media. And have you heard of Ricky Gervais?
Oh yes, I have heard.
Okay,
of
well,
did you see his latest quote this week?
No, I haven't seen him. I'm actually quite saddened because I used to like Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, me too.
I thought he was a very intelligent guy.
Well,
I think he had some.
We'll read you the latest quote to do with this African lion being shot.
No, it was the elephant.
Sorry, elephant. Sorry.
So his quote from Twitter was: "German hunter pays 40k to kill Africa's biggest elephant. ... Can I pay 40k to punch Germany's biggest twat's teeth out?"
Now, the thing, Ricky, is that
Ricky, are you listening?
Ricky, you can pay £40,000 to take a picture of that elephant to keep that elephant alive, but will he?
No, and you know, I don't know, David. Did you see Ivan Carter? Who's
yeah, I love that.
Another really great custodian of wildlife and conservation.
Huge fan.
Massive fan of him. Now, he, after the Cecil the Lion story came out, he came out and put an open invitation to anybody out there, and which basically said, "You can come on me to Africa. I will take you in, and you can hunt a lion with your camera. You can take as many pictures as you like, and once you're done, you can pay the trophy fee for that animal." And then you'll, go on your merry way after your 7-day, photo safari, taking photos of that lion. No one has taken him up on that offer. These people are very, very, very quick to jump on and chastise hunting without once mentioning any of the benefits of it, or indeed putting their hands in their own pockets.
The offer still stands.
The offer still stands, by the way, if anybody's out there.
If anybody wants to pay $40,000 to go and take pictures of an elephant, then we can arrange it.
Yeah, we can arrange it.
Yep, and we can do the same thing with deer. If anybody wants to take a picture of a red stag paying trophy prices, I'm sure that we can get a lot of Scottish estates to take it up there and take a picture of a royal and then take you down again.
Yeah, exactly. And
bring the
the hypocrisy of it is just
leave the iPhone.
Leave the iPhone.
But actually, but this again, it leads us back to where we started by the distancing yourself from your responsibility. It's easy to talk and to write stuff on Facebook. It's also very easy to threaten people on Facebook. But once you rock up on this doorstep and say, "Okay, guys, you wrote to me yesterday that this, and you were going to beat me up. Here I am. Got a camera crew here so we can record the whole thing. So I'm not. I'm here voluntarily. Please."
Keyboard warriors. That's what they are.
Exactly, the keyboard. But the problem with the keyboard warriors is that it gives you the impression that this is that this is important, that this is reality. I'm quite saddened with Ricky Gervais because, and I would love, if Ricky Gervais, if you are listening, I would love to take you hunting. I would enjoy that. We would have a great day. You were allowed to tease me as much as possible, but it's very, very, very clear that it's due to lack of knowledge about it. They actually don't know what goes on. They actually don't know where the money goes. They actually don't know that the trophy fees from an elephant hunt or a lion hunt is one of the best ways to fund anti-poaching and conservation. There's a reason why private game reserves are allowed all the way around the conservation, the national parks, is because when you have a belt of armed, skilled, and very pissed off farmers, then you don't need to do anti-poaching because they do the whole thing for you. The animals have a value, and these people protect that value. Then, okay, then you pluck out a few animals here and there, but that's the price you pay to save the whole area. I know that in South Africa now they have a problem. Some of the places they used to sell hunts within the nature conservancies, but now they stopped because they were so afraid of people like Ricky Gervais, which means the money that they paid to shoot a single buffalo, it doesn't come in. They still shoot the buffalo now, but they have to pay somebody to shoot the buffalo. And it's the same thing with elephants in Kruger.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
You have so many elephants in Kruger, and you need to take off a few to thin the herd. It's like everything else. It's like if you have too many mice.
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand that. You mentioned elephants. Everyone thinks they're rare.
Yeah,
like you
I
just
love
mentioned.
elephants. Yeah, I think it's an awesome animal. I have a huge respect for them. They're also extremely dangerous if you piss them off or if you behave in the wrong way. So this is nothing. But again, it's the distance from reality. It's the same thing with the guy throwing the meat in the bin that we talked about to start out with, is that when the going gets rough, people don't want to be a part of it. When you tell them the reality about big game hunting in Africa, or just hunting in general in Africa, they kind of pull out with, but the animals are so cute.
I mean, it's very easy to criticize these things if you've never had your feet on the ground, and that's the one thing that really bugs me, is you see all these things on social media, like you said, people shouting very loudly, and those people haven't put their feet on the ground. They haven't done anti-poaching patrols like I have and like you have, and we're hunters, then that's part of conservation. They haven't done recollaring projects of elephants. I've done that. I'm a hunter, but I was doing something for conservation. The amount of hunting concessions that there are in Africa, and the number of tons of metalwork and ironwork that they lift as a result of poaching patrols every year in snares and various different sprung traps is phenomenal. And it would blow people's minds if they could be bothered to look into it. And all those concessions that are now closed down in Botswana, the poaching is just going through the roof. And the same is true of any country that's ever shut down hunting for any period of time. Their rural population starts to starve, or if they're not starving, they're now poaching because the game has no value, and eventually you end up with no game in these areas. Daryl just pointed to his phone just a second ago when we were talking about the influence of celebrities. How many people follow Ricky Gervais?
So Ricky
Twitter?
Gervais has 10 million people on just his Twitter account. Now that is a huge amount of people
listening to the stuff that he comes out with. And it's very difficult to find anybody kind of on our page, on our side of the fence, that has that kind of influence in one. In 20 seconds you can put something out. I think
the only people that you could actually compare to that kind of influence is people like Jim Shockey and Donnie Vincent. Maybe they have the numbers, I guess.
Yeah,
but they're hunters though.
I'm just thinking that Ricky Gervais would be very welcome to if he can give me 40Ks and then he can hit me in the face and then I'll just use the 40K for conservation purposes.
Well, that's an offer and a half.
So we can treble that. Ricky Gervais can take a punch at each one of us for 40K each, and then we'll go and put it into anti-poaching in Africa.
I'm very good at taking a beating. But what pisses me off is that criticizing is free. You should be allowed to criticize. You should be allowed to point out things that are wrong. In Denmark we have quite a culture of speaking our minds. Sometimes it's not a very good idea, but we do it anyway. But criticizing is free, but it should have consequences. You should understand the consequences of what you are messing with. I'm not saying that the whole hunting industry in Africa is all squeaky clean and everything runs as it should. Just like it's not every single driver, it's not every single person with a driving license who obeys the laws of the road, because people are different. But as a sound principle, it still doesn't mean that we don't legalize that we illegalize driving. It just means that we have to be critical about those who don't stay within the lines, but we also have to understand that there's a purpose with what happens, and there's a reason why hunting in Africa, the hunting industry in Africa, isn't a new thing, and there's a reason why animals haven't been killed all over Africa en masse, is because that the hunting industry actually works, and it's been working for 100 years, and it's been working quite well. If you look at Kenya is the best and most wonderful example of what happens.
I quote this all the time to people. Carry on. You tell it out of your mouth.
People hate it. People hate it because it's a very, very good example of when they stopped professional hunting or hunting at all in Kenya, in a very short period of time, the big animals, they died out. They got killed because, again, having an elephant trampling around in your farm, it's not something that you want. So it's not just poaching; it's also that these animals, there are not space for these animals. You can see it in Germany with wild boars. wild boars, they're a huge problem. They destroy crops, they destroy a lot of things, but the hunters pay for them. They pay for the damages, so the wild boars are allowed. Same thing in Africa. It's the exact same thing.
A leopard is a good example of that.
A leopard is a great example. A leopard eats a lot of livestock. A cheetah eats a lot of livestock. A lion eats a lot of livestock. And livestock costs money. I don't know if anybody realized this, but resources are quite scarce in Africa. You don't just let the cat eat your stuff. If we had it at home, imagine. I know that they were talking about reintroducing the lynx in Scotland.
In Scotland, yeah.
Yeah. And the uproar from people that it's going to eat our sheep, it's going to do this, it's going to do this. We have the same thing in Denmark. We have the wolves now in Jutland. And people are freaking out about the wolves because, no, they're going to eat our horses and our kids and whatever. I think the wolves are a little bit surprised about that.
It wasn't on their menu.
But how can we demand of Africans or people in a country that's a lot poorer than Denmark or Britain or whatever, how can we demand that they don't kill problem-causing animals or don't put a value on them? When we are completely up in arms just because an overgrown dog has decided to cross the border from Germany. Imagine if we had lions on the British Isles and everybody was told, like, you're not really allowed to shoot them. Yes, they might have eaten your wife, but please.
It wouldn't happen.
Exactly, it wouldn't happen because it doesn't work. And I think another problem is with the antis, especially when we talk about Africa, is that it's actually quite racist. The view of a lot of people is that Africa is still somewhat, it still looks a little bit like the Lion King. And people are still living mainly in huts. And we still have to save Africa. I get very annoyed with the whole we have to save Africa thing because a lot of African countries are actually doing quite well. It's a great and wonderful thing. If you go to a country like Ghana, everything is it's really going well. And the economies are booming and things are moving up. And in South Africa, even though they have problems in South Africa, the economy is still quite, it's going forward and things are being built and populations are growing quite fast.
Zambia is another good example these days.
Yeah, Zambia as well, Tanzania as well, Kenya especially. If we want to save the wild areas, we have to look at what we've done in Europe. We have to look at how can we create a value here. And sending in 100 million photo tourists to drive around in their Toyotas, scaring the animals and destroying habitat with their big tires. That's not saving anything. No. That's creating a Tivoli.
And there's a lot more impact from a photographic
tourist. It's a huge impact.
Than
the
a
CO2
hunter.
Impact is insane.
I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I'm sure it was a post by Ivan Carter, but I'm sure that he quoted something along the region of it takes 10 photographic safari individuals for one hunter to bring in the same income to an area. And their impact on an area is obviously tenfold because there's 10 of them, and on top of that, they go everywhere, pretty much in vehicles. So,
but again, to answer your original question about now we're freaking out that the biggest the biggest elephant in Africa has been shot. What about turning around and saying, okay, it's amazing that we've actually created areas where elephants were allowed to grow this big.
I know. Jens, the real story. You and I both know that was exactly what he put out. The title of his post on social media for that article was wonderful, and he basically said what you said. That through conservation and importantly hunting concessions, this animal has still lived.
Yeah, because people have seen that before. Everybody's known that elephants. It's not just it's popped out of the ground. People must have seen it, must have known about it. But they also know that the value of this animal grows exponentially with the size. It's the same thing with the buffaloes. You let them grow. It's the same thing with the deer. You let your stags mature and you let them grow, so then you can get a higher price. It's actually, if you really, there's somebody out there who's had a very hard time understanding this. You have to think about it as very big scale farming with no fences.
Yep.
These are your animals. The more you take care of them, the more they take care of you. You don't shoot all your young cows. You let them grow up. You let them produce. You don't shoot your biggest breeding bull. You let him breed until he's kind of bred out, and then you pluck him when he's at his when he's going down, when he's peaked.
Yeah, and
it's
I think
the exact same thing.
I think that is probably the easiest thing to conceptualize for people who are not hunters and who have never taken life and eaten that, is that hunting and management through hunting is basically large-scale wild farming, and it's a lot kinder to those animals that whose lives we're taking than modern farming practices in any Western country. It has to be, because they're in their natural environment. But sorry,
yeah,
I'll let you.
To conclude the question, the elephant. With the whole social media storm and the whole media storm in general against hunters, it's interesting that there is actually, we are not as buggered as you'd think. We have, in Denmark, we've proven that you can actually win the media war. You just have to be very honest about what you do, but you also have to control your communication. And a good example is that the Danish zoos have a tradition of, when they kill quite a few animals every year because they only have this much space. And a couple of years ago, it was a giraffe that they killed in Copenhagen Zoo, and the whole world went ballistic about it because we were going to dissect this giraffe in front of a lot of school children, because this is what we do. The head of the Copenhagen Zoo, Carl Holst, went out and said, "Okay, guys, this is the reality of a zoo. Animals die all the time. We can't move this. Nobody wants our giraffe. Please, if you want our giraffe, we have a free giraffe for you. Please take it." Nobody stepped up. And
maybe Ricky Gervais can take it off their hands next time.
Yeah, he's very welcome. He can open his own petting zoo. Honestly, Ricky Gervais, get in the game. Please participate. Stop moaning. Just get with the program. You can buy a cheap rifle, I'm sure. No, but what he ended up doing was he actually turned the whole discourse around from being something that, oh, you shouldn't kill this animal, to going and say, this animal should not go to waste. It shouldn't be. In other zoos, they euthanize animals behind closed curtains, and they don't tell people about it. You don't tell them that you actually slaughter quite a few lions every year because, well, lions breed. But by doing this, by being open about it, by saying we do this not just openly but in front of people, and they're very welcome to bring their kids so they can learn what it actually looks like inside. He actually managed to turn that whole discourse, and now they just euthanized a lion in another zoo in Denmark, and everybody goes ballistic because, oh no, you killed this poor lion. The lion doesn't really care about it. It's very dead, and they said as well, yes, but guys, this is the reality. All the kids who come, all the grown-ups who come, they learn more from this single experience than you would from watching The Lion King. Yeah. Because The Lion King is a lie. That's not what life looks like.
And Bambi. Bambi was a lie too. I think there's a theme there.
Yeah, they should have shot the fawn first.
There we are. Quoted it. David says, "Shoot
movie.
Bambi first."
Yeah, it's also better meat. But my point is that a lot of the anti-hunters, a lot of the hype is trying to keep up a reality that's not there. They're trying to keep alive about Africa being this wild place where people run around and the animals are running around freely and happy.
All at one with each other.
All at one with each other, and this is that is the grass that the antelopes eat. All that stuff, that whole fantasy, and I know that it's very, very hard to wake up and find out that your dog did not go to that camp. Your dog was shot. It's not nice to know that life ends at one point, but it does. Yeah. So again, I think what hunters are up against is that whole fantasy that life goes on, and the pictures that we have in our heads are actually reality.
Yeah, and I think
that's why we have we have a very hard time fighting that, because that's kind of it's a very human sentiment to try to forget that at some point you're not going to be here anymore.
Yeah, and it's very much ingrained. Well, it's ingrained in everything. We've talked about social media, but we've just touched on Disney cartoons, and it's ingrained in kids from a very young age. But I think what you've said there, pretty much sums it up, in that we need to make sure that the lies which have been ingrained in the upbringing of children, basically around the world, we provide the information to re-educate, because that's what it is. It has to be a re-education process with the truths.
You can't just expect people to just...
They can't.
Yeah,
we can't really expect people to go out and find it for themselves if we don't make it easy for people to access the information. And I think that that is what you're doing, and that is what a few people are starting to do now. And like you said, the Americans are maybe a little bit ahead of us, because they've started to do it, but they have a population which hunting very much is part of who they are. The same is true in New Zealand, but it's certainly not the case in the UK. And there's Germany's not a good example, because hunting is very much part of the culture there. But this needs to spread globally, because there's a lot of people who are anti-hunting who shout very loudly.
Yeah, and I think the reason why the Americans are quite a lot forward is because they're better funded.
That's probably true.
Because again, you have a very great distance between people living in the country and living in the cities. Actually, a lot bigger than you have in Denmark. We have a lot of hunters who live in the middle of Copenhagen, because it takes about half an hour to get out of the city. But we don't have the means. We don't have the funds. We every time you want to do a project, you kind of try to scramble for money. And what people need to understand is, this is a battle of cultures, of realities. If we want to change the reality, then we have to fund it.
Yeah.
And the more money that's put into telling these stories, the more stories we can tell, and the better stories we can tell. And it doesn't take a lot to change the general perception of the public. Hunting was not very popular in Denmark in the 80s. Now it's extremely popular. I think they said 68% of the population have a very positive view on hunting. I think it was 68, but it's something around that. And we have an increase of hunters every year. We are 250,000 registered Danish hunters out of a population of 5 million, and that is mostly due to all the real stories being told about living your life with honesty and going out and actually knowing where your food came from, and what nature is like. Not from the screen, or not from the parks, or not from the zoos, but
living and breathing it. And I think
getting some mud on the boots.
Exactly. That we've had such a great conversation today. My one takeaway actually and word from everything that you've said, and there's been so much great stuff there, is honesty. Because you are absolutely right in what you say. I think the more honest we can be with ourselves and with the public, and just present it on a plate, present the honesty on a plate of what we do, the more we will be able to have an impact. And I think everybody needs to listen to that very carefully. But David, I could carry on talking to you for another hour, but I guess we've got to draw a line somewhere. We're just going to have you on again, or you're going to have to come over and do some hunting here, and then we can maybe do a podcast in the studio while you're here.
Yeah, that would be good.
I'll gladly do any of those. I love hunting in the British Isles. It's you have an extraordinary country. So
the little taste I had of Denmark a few months back was fantastic as well.
I've only ever been in Copenhagen. I haven't adventured anywhere out, so I'd love to see more of there as well.
Yeah, but you're very welcome. It's actually something that I do encourage more hunters to travel in Europe. All of Europe, all our neighboring countries it's so much fun. We go to Sweden all the time. We go to Germany, and it's very easy for us, being European citizens, to
travel around. Yeah.
There's not much excuse anymore, is there? It's not only is it cheap, it's very easy to go country to country.
Yeah, and it's fun, and it's different, and it's weird. And that's also it's the adventure, it's the travel. So you're very welcome. And also, if anybody's listening in who wants to experience the weird reality of Danish hunters, they're very welcome to contact me.
I hope you get some people to take you up on that, and most importantly, I hope that Ricky Gervais takes us up on our offer of punching us all in the face for £40,000 each, and hopefully goes out hunting with you or us. There's plenty of opportunity there for him to see the other side. But with that, look, David, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a great chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we will speak again soon. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Anytime.
Well, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. I've really enjoyed speaking to David. And, you know, like Byron said earlier, it went on for so long that we've had to put it into 2 parts. Now,
and it could have gone on for longer as well, but we had to draw a line somewhere.
So I think next time we'll have David on again, and we'll delve even deeper into all these topics. Now, don't forget that this podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. It is available a day early on iTunes, so subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Now, all our listeners, remember this podcast is for everyone out there. So if you have any topics or any issues that you would like discussed on this podcast, get in touch with us. Find us on our Facebook page or email us at paceproductionsuk@gmail.com.
Also, remember that this podcast is not only designed for those of you already involved in hunting and country pursuits, it is really there and available to the general public. So if you have friends who are skeptical about hunting and game management, make sure you introduce them to this podcast. This is exactly the kind of platform that should be there for everybody to listen to, and it is freely available. So try and introduce some of your non-hunting friends to it. Thank you very much for listening. This podcast has been brought to you by the Scottish Association for Country Sports.